Episode 4 of One Punch Man was like freaking awesome. We got introduced to this new awesome character named Sonic, and this guy is definitely freaking fast. Even his like nickname or real name apparently is called Speedo Sound, not Speedo Sound, because that right there would be, copying the video game character, but that right there was definitely a nice take on Sonic because obviously Sonic's character is based around the legendary video game character. And so this episode, to me, it was like friggin' priceless. And the ending right there, even though it was like a very, very basic ending, I'm actually looking forward to seeing, how Saitama and Genos will actually, handle that, the hero test. Because right now, even though, all this time, Saitama has been calling himself a hero, he's actually not one in the public eye. But we see now that in this episode, there was this villain named Hammerhead, and we see now that like him and his men, they were going around, and we see him trying to preach the word to all these other civilians about, how the poor or pretty much the lazy should have the privileges of the rich to get free stuff like clothes, food. And we see now that while this guy was like going on and on, no one was listening to him. And so we see now the Hammerhead, what he was like planning to do, he was actually going after the richest man in the city, and we see now that this guy actually had his own building. But we see that the first one that they went to, it was actually the wrong one. But we see now that like one of his henchmen, he was able to knock down an entire building with like one punch. And to me, that right there was like freaking insane. But then we learned that right there was the wrong building. I was like freaking dying. And we even see now that the Hammerhead, he did not want to look bad apparently. And we see now that he pretty much, swept it under the rug, and they have moved on. And so we see now that once Saitama had woke up, because he had a nightmare about someone playing rock, paper, scissors with him, and it had a bug on his finger, and apparently that right there was like so horrifying to him, it had woken him up from his slumber. But now on the news, we hit a report about Hammerhead, and we see that for Saitama, he was actually not even going to like bother dealing with these guys. And to me, that right there was like somewhat surprising because he's a hero, and that means he should go out there and take out this threat. But we see now that the reason why he actually decided to do something, it was because that like all these men all had, shaved heads. They didn't go bald like Saitama. They actually, shaved their heads. And we see now that if you guys continue to like run amok, that right there would actually, give Saitama a bad name because people would think that he's one of those paradisers that I believe they were called. And we see now that like someone actually did accuse him of being one of those men. And so we see that like there was like this one hero guy, I believe his name was like Kuman Rider. I'm probably saying the name, so wrong. But this writer guy, he actually got a balloon down from a tree for a little kid, and we see now that this guy, he's on a bike, but apparently he's a hero because people definitely know who he is. And so we see now that when he tried to actually, step up and take out Hammerhead and his crew, he actually got beat pretty easily, as we saw now that like after, well, we didn't really see it, but after a brief exchange of like his, I guess, we see him now face down on the ground, and we see blood, coming from his face. So obviously this guy is not as strong, but even though he's a hero, people still know who he is though, because we see now that, they were all very hopeful when he first appeared. And so now we see that the building that this rich guy lives in apparently is called the Golden Turd, as we see a golden pile of shit on top of it. And so we see now that we have one of these butlers. Well, we have a butler him telling him, to actually, to leave the building. But right now he said that if he leaves, then that right there will like ruin his reputation. And so that right there is where we have Sonic coming into play, because apparently Sonic now is still under contract of this guy, even though it won't last for long. And we see now that like Sonic, already showing off his speed as he easily got behind the rich guy, his butler. And so now when we have Hammerhead and his crew making it to like the forest area, and they were like getting kind of close to where the rich guy lived, we see now that right there is where Sonic, had appeared. And right off the bat, Sonic was like going on saying that not one of his opponents have actually, like fought him and lived. And right now he wants to keep that going. And so Hammerhead pretty much got his boys to attack him, but that right there was like their downfall. As we see now, Sonic's speed is just, so freaking crazy. He cut off their heads so freaking fast. Like to me, that really actually like blew my mind, because all we saw is like heads flying everywhere. And we even see that like one guy actually got this like very bad treatment where you see his head cut into like 3 different sections, and that right there, which is brutal. And so eventually now when it was Hammerhead time, to actually fight Sonic, this guy was like obviously scared. And even when he like tried to actually protect his head, we see now that is that his armor actually got, a little damage. And so now, like Hammerhead definitely couldn't keep up with like Sonic's speed, but what he tried to do was to actually, make Sonic run on this path that he set with these rocks. And that right there, actually worked, because Sonic knew what he was doing, but at the same time, he was just going to play along. And we see Sonic now, like running, straight forward at him. And so right now you have Hammerhead, holding this rock, but that right there was not his real weapon. It was actually this tree that he grabbed, down behind him. And to be honest, that tree right there, it did not look as big, at first as when he, first used it. But we see now that even that right there was not good enough, as Sonic was like not only able to dodge it, but at the same time he also, attacked Hammerhead and threw a kunai right into the back of his head. And so we see now Hammerhead falling, and you would think that he'd be dead, but no, that right there was like actually a troll. That's where we have Sonic on the phone, talking to his boss about what he did. We see now that the Hammerhead was like able to get away. Oh, and speaking of Genos, like early on in the episode, we see him now getting worked on by his doctor that had like saved his life, and we see that Genos here was like still going on about Saitama. And so we see now that his doctor, who looks like a very, very old coconut head with that hairstyle, we learn now that apparently this guy is like working on some new like parts for Genos, and apparently these parts might make him as strong as Saitama, if not surpass him as well. So I feel like that right there was like a foreshadowing of a possible, sparring match between Genos and Saitama, because obviously Genos here will want to test these new parts against the person that, he wants to follow and someday surpass. So that right there should be interesting if Genos could, somehow get Saitama, a level of strength. But eventually we have Hammerhead running away. And we see now that Saitama actually found him in the forest. And so now we see that, Hammerhead, was like wondering, was like, who are you and what's going on here? And obviously, Saitama, he had told him that for like personal reasons, I'm here to like take you and your men out. And so Saitama was like wondering, where are they? And we see now that Hammerhead had punched him once. Obviously, that right there did not phase Saitama at all. And we see now, Saitama felt a little bit let down, because he was like looking forward to actually fight against, those suits. And so we see now that Hammerhead actually got pissed off to the point that we see him now going full strength in the suit, and we see him doing like some spin attack. And when Saitama had saw that, that right there had reminded him of when he was younger, and easily, had stopped that attack. And not only that, we see that Saitama, he actually held back his strength so much that only the suit would be destroyed when he actually punched him. And so right now, Hammerhead was like definitely pissing his pants as we see him now, naked. And so right now, Saitama was like, change your ways and get out of here. And we see Hammerhead, taking off. And so obviously now Hammerhead should be, be very grateful that right now that he is still alive. But then we have Sonic appear, once again, and we see him now looking for Hammerhead, but obviously obviously we have Saitama there instead, and so we see now that when Sonic was like questioning him, even though Saitama had told him where Hammerhead was, we have Sonic still attacking him. At first, he had used his kunai, which easily, Saitama had caught. And we even see that when Sonic had used his sword, Saitama caught that as well, even though, that right there almost had went into his eye. And so right now we have Sonic getting the wrong idea, and we have Saitama trying to explain, who he is, and that he's the hero of fun. But we have Sonic telling him that, he had never heard of him, and that right there had like really crushed Saitama's spirit. And so right now we have Sonic, feeling pretty pissed off, because right now his pride, it was like definitely hurt. If we have Saitama not dodging once but twice, Sonic attacks. And so we see now that like these two were like gonna fight. And we even have Saitama, noticing that like Sonic here just want to try out his moves, especially with that innocent smile on his face. But that right there was not innocent at all. Sonic here probably has one of the most creepiest faces that like he can make in all anime to me, because I will say that when they animated his faces, they were on point with that. And so we see now that, Sonic speed, we see for real now in a fight against Saitama, but even that right there wasn't enough, as we see that when he had, went to attack Saitama, he would track him all of this time and asked him if he could go home now. And so we see eventually Saitama actually raised one of his fists, and Sonic actually came down on it. And we see him now getting hit right in the crotch. And I thought for sure that right there would kill him. But no, after that hilarious, technical difficulty, mentioned appeared, I was like freaking dying laughing. And we even see now that we have Sonic, pretty much saying that him and Saitama are rivals, and the next time they meet, that right there will be, Saitama demise. And the way he was looking at when he said that, there was no way that like Saitama took him seriously. But we see now, back in his apartment where we have Dennis there as well, Saitama was like definitely, pretty depressed, because we see now that, because no one knows who he is, even though he has done so much for them. And we see that right there made Genesis curious, because because that Cuman writer guy, or hero, whatever his name is, he actually got all the credit for taking out Hammerhead and the Paradise Fish, which is like very weird to me. But we see now that the reason why no one knows who Saitama is because he is not a part of the hero registry. And pretty much that right there pretty much acknowledged anyone who like passed their test as an official hero, because if you go around, calling yourself one, and you're not part of that registry, that right there just means you're a weirdo. And so right now we have Saitama thinking about signing up, and he also asked Genesis like if he was on there as well, but Genesis says no, because he had felt no reason to. But we see now that the way that Saitama was like able to bait in Genesis what to say, that if like both of them register, and I'm guessing if they both pass, then Saitama will like really see Genesis as his disciple. And so that right there was like a pretty good setup, to get both of them to become official heroes. And we even see now that at the end of the episode, they are now going to take the test, and we see all these other heroes, walking there as well. And that right there is where the episode ended off at. And that right there, I'm definitely looking forward to this week, because I want to see what kind of test do you actually have to pass to become an official hero. Oh, and not to mention, there were like these two robots who actually found Hammerhead in the woods and attacked him. And I do wonder if maybe the robot who attacked Hammerhead is the one who responsible for like ruining Jenna's life pretty much. And so that right there should be, like I'm pretty sure those two robots will play a major role probably next week. And also Hammerhead is still alive, because we see him, faking his death once again, as we saw him crying, thanking his mother for actually giving him, such a thick skull. And also it's hilarious how like all this time he still had that kunai in the back of his head. But this episode, to me, it was hilarious. probably one, if not the funniest episode that we got in so far, because I was just dying throughout it. So the comedy is on point. Sonic is an awesome character, and I do want to see more of him. Maybe he won't always be creepy, or at least, I'm hoping so. But as always, don't forget to let me know what you guys thought, and please do not forget to like and subscribe because it really helps me out. But as always, you guys take it easy, and I will see you all next time.